Everyone, we are here for a very special occasion, which is the launch of an Anachronous Shower, which is a book of poems by a very young and dynamic poet, Subhrasankar Das. He hails from Tripura, and the evening is graced by the presence of many distinguished literary people from all over the world and from different parts of India. And it's my proud privilege to be able to be a part of this program. And on behalf of Insha Publication, on behalf of the poet and like myself, I welcome all of you to this evening of literary exchanges. And I welcome you all. So this, we shall be listening to all our eminent guests in a while, and meanwhile I'll just inform you about the flow of the event. So the evening is going to be going to start with the online launch of the book. We're going to have the formal launch of the book, which will be done with a beautiful video that has been created. And after that, we shall have the panel discussion, followed by readings from the book of the poet. I've known Subhrasankar Das through his, first I came across him through the video journal called Water, which was shared with me by our mutual friend, Sri Shamal Bhattacharya. He's a very senior author and a translator, award-winning translator, and also a panelist for this evening. And I was actually like quite awed by the kind of things that he has done with the magazine, because what I felt that he had made an optimum utilization of available technology and coupled it beautifully with literature. So that's what first drew me towards that magazine, and I found it extremely intriguing. Well, after that, we did have quite a number of exchanges, and I've also written for the magazine that he edits, the Shadowcraft. And I'll request you all to, all our viewers, all our listeners here, I would request them to visit his e-journals and the video journal, as well as the e-journal that he has, and also to to read and to spread the word, because he's doing quite a lot of work with literature here. Now I will start with, I'll share my screen so that all of you can watch the video and be a part of this book launch this evening. Yeah. Here we go.
খুঁজি ফিরে তাই স্বপ্ন যে হাই না বলায় কথা স্মৃতির মোহনায় তুমি আছো আছো মিশে আমার অনুভবে আবার তোমার কাছে হারিয়ে আমি যেতে চাই দেশে হারাবো দেশে হারামন দেশে হারামন দেশে হারামন দেশে হারামন দেশে হারামন দেশে হারামন দেশে হারামন
So, this was a very beautiful, this was an excellent video, which showed us gave us an entry into the world of poems of Subhrasankar Dash, and we'll be knowing more about it. We'll be talking more about his book, his work, and also his literary career as we move further. A little about the publishers. Insha Publication, who's also the organizer of this beautiful webinar cum book launch program, is run by Anees Ahmed Ansari and his team from TriNagar, Delhi. Now, they have a wide range of academic and literary books. You can check them out at inshapublications.blogspot.com. I'm sure some of our viewers would like to check out their publications. They, as the end of the video showed, that they do have quite an enviable collection of books which many of us might want to read. Thank you, Insha Publication, for this platform and for this evening. Now, let me introduce our guests for this evening, and after that, we are going to move towards the panel discussion. So, we have Ashraf Aboul-Yazid, Egyptian author. He is the writer, poet, novelist, and journalist. He has 40 published, authored, and translated books. His travel literature of 33 countries has been published in cultural magazines. He's a member of Egyptian Writers Union, editor-in-chief of the Asian in Arabic, president of AGA, Asia Journalist Association, South Korea, and coordinator of World Poetry Movement in Egypt. He's the winner of Manhei Grand Prize in Literature 2014, the Republic of Korea. He has won the Arab Journalism Award in Culture 2015 from Dubai Press Club, UAE. This year, he was chosen a jury member of 17th Kazan International Muslim Film Festival. He is the 2021 LIFFT Festival of Festivals laureate with Golden Medal. Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this evening, and we are looking forward to hearing from you and knowing more about literature. Our next guest of the evening is Glenn Armstrong. He holds an MFA in English from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and edits a poetry journal called Quail Garters. He has 3 current books of poems: Invisible Histories, The New Vaudeville, and Midsummer. His work has appeared in Poetry Northwest Conduit and the Cream City Review. Welcome you, sir, to this evening, and we are surely will be enriched by your presence, by your words. Welcome to this platform. The next, our next guest of the day, we have Dr. Mandana Kolahdouz. She is currently the visiting assistant professor at Language and Translation Studies in the department IAUT, Iran. She started her she's somehow got removed from the stream, so I'll just add her to the stream, and I'll give her this thing. Yes. So Dr. Mandana Kolahdouz is currently the visiting assistant professor at the Language and Translation Studies Department, IAUT, Iran. She started her career as a freelance translator, Persian to English and vice versa, in 2006. She has more than 8 years of working experience as a lecturer in linguistics and translation studies at PNU of East Azerbaijan, Iran. She also is a member of the Linguistic Society of Iran, journal reviewer, keynote speaker of national and international conferences. She has articles on linguistics and translation studies published in various peer-reviewed journals and proceedings. Her research interests are Asian studies, sociolinguistic semantics, discourse analysis, translation studies, and onomastics. Welcome to this evening, Mandana, and it's a pleasure to see you again on screen. I remember meeting you last year, and then again we meet this year, and I'm sure you're going to have a good time, and we are also going to be enriched by your presence. The next guest of the day is Rashmika Manjawala. He is a writer and a translator in Sri Lankan literature. He's published 2 books and 2 translations. His first book was Shukran Qatar, which is a gripping memoir about the life of Sri Lankan workers in Middle East. In fact, it was the very first memoir written in Sinhala about Middle East workers and their lifestyle. Then he published a translation of Nobel Prize winner in literature 2018, Olga Tokarczuk's novel Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, which was highly appreciated by the readership and critics. Recently, he published a short story collection and a translation of a short story collection. In 2021, his short story, A Secret of Swan, was shortlisted for Creators of Justice Award, which was organized by International Human Rights Festival in New York. The competition had received literary works from a number of countries, and he has also translated a short story collection called A Slow Boat to China. Welcome to this evening, and Rashmika, we are looking forward to hearing from you. We have Partha Sharathi Gupta. He teaches in the Department of English, Tripura University, Agartala. His area of interests and specialization are theatre studies, Indian aesthetics, modern critical theory, popular culture and literature, and Shakespeare scholarship and criticism. His alma mater is the University of Calcutta, from where he pursued both BA and MA degrees. He has pursued his PhD on Indian English drama and urbanity under the supervisor of Professor Himadri Lahiri, University of Burdwan, West Bengal. He has taken keen interest in translating folklores from India's Northeast and Tripura in particular. His translations of the orators of Bongcher, Maima, Chakma, and Tripuri communities have been published by Sahitya Academy, New Delhi, under the patronage of Sahitya Academy Northeast Center for Oral Literature and Culture, in anthologies dedicated to each community, respectively. He is a cinema buff, and his primary passion has always been teaching above everything else. So, warm welcome to you, Parthoda, and it's good to see you on virtual platform. Though actually, I would have preferred a more physical launch, if possible, as well, which would have given us a better scope for interaction. But then, of course, webinar has its own merits as well. We have so many people from so many different parts of the country. So, welcome to this evening. We have another very prominent Indian literary persona with us, Promila Devi Arora, and she's a retired principal here, and she has won a number of awards. Unfortunately, her device is yet showing not connected, so I'm not able to add her to the stream. So I would request Subhrasankar, if you can hear me, to just see if she can be connected. Meanwhile, I'll just talk about her. She is the National Film Award winner of the book Forgotten Masters of Hindi Cinema by Satish Chopra. She has her own collection of poems, Yun Bhi Hota Hai, published in many edited books, and she's published in many edited books in Hindi and in Punjabi poetry as well. Besides these, she had published in many other magazines and newspapers as well. She has been writing songs and scripts and have recorded a cassette for motivation by District Literary Society to be distributed in district. She had appeared on DD, that is the Doordarshan, the Indian television channel that we have, that is the national television channel, many times for interviews on different subjects and exclusive interviews for her work. And she's at present working in many committees and many literary organizations, and have the privilege of being honored in the field of education, literature, and social work. At present, she is writing on Tagore's thoughtfulness. And we have with us Shyamul Bhattacharya. Shyamul Bhattacharya is a Bengali short story writer, novelist, and polyglot of repute. He's published 6 story collections, 4 novels, 2 children's books, 2 essay collections, 12 translated books, and 3 edited books. Beside Bengali, he knows Hindi, English, Punjabi, Dogri, and Rajasthani. His translations include poetry of Jugal Parihar from Rajasthan into Bengali, short stories of Amrita Pritham, Kartar Singh Duggal, Om Prakash Gaso, Ajit Kaur, Ramsarup Akhi, and Mohan Bhandari, and many more. So he has also been translating from Dogri into Bengali. Then he has translated dramas of Arjun Dev Charan from Rajasthani into Bangla. And he has been recipients of many awards, including the Shutapa Roy Chaudhuri Award by Paschim Bongo Bangla Academy, the Shahitya Academy Translation Award, and Amrita Pritham Award. We welcome Sri Shyamul Bhattacharya, but we are unable to add him to the stream right now. Shyamulda is on in the stream already. So I welcome you also, and we are looking forward to a very interesting evening of discussions. So a warm welcome to all the guests here. The theme of today's evening is emergent themes in contemporary literature, which in itself is which has a wide scope for discussion, a wide scope for debates. But some of the things that we see around is there has been an emerging eco-critical scope in the literary spaces, as well as with all the worldwide events around. We see that poetry is also becoming a site of resistance, and not just poetry, literature from every genres is becoming a site for resistance, and that somehow is that is one of the emergent trends that comes to my mind. And another important area that we can see now has been probably started or ushered in by the pandemic COVID-19, which has pushed us all inside our homes, but then we have also tried to find our way out from the home by using various virtual mode, by using various as much technology as possible, which help us to stay connected together. And it seems that there has been a number of trends in the literary scenario currently, where somehow or the other pandemic has left its impact. And therefore I think that this is also one of the areas which we can find in pandemic, in emergent themes in contemporary literature. In fact, I was just doing I was working for a paper when I was just researching the kind of pandemic literature that we are finding around, and it seems that there has been almost every publishing house has something or some work or the other by some prominent or upcoming literary persona which deals with the pandemic. There have been short story collections revolving around COVID-19. There have been poetry revolving around COVID-19. And there has been also a surge in people's interest in also knowing about the previous pandemics of the previous era. So, and another thing that I find is a part of this emergent theme in contemporary literature is women's writing. And a lot of women, they have started writing about themselves, which takes me back to Helen Sixou's Écriture Feminism, where we find that women are talking about themselves, talking about experiences that are unique to women and women's life. And not just women, but also gender itself has become a fluid identity, which it also is. And we find people talking about identities. So literature has also become a space where we talk and look at various identities. So keeping all these trends in mind, I would like to go to our panelists today one by one and would like to know about what they think about these emergent trends in contemporary literature. And it would be wonderful if they could give us their perspectives in, say, about 5 to 6 minutes. So let us start with Ashraf Aboul-Yazid from Egypt, and let's hear what he has to say. Over to you.
Thank you, Feris, and welcome to all guests around from all over countries. If we are giving examples of what is literature today about, actually, we must say before pandemic or after, like now. Because I guess that before pandemic, it was talking about the presence of a man or a human being outside his country is working or giving some chances to be there for as immigrant or citizen. But when he gives a piece of literature about this life, it means he is giving an example of being traveling and being living outside. But during pandemic, actually, it became different, because now writing tells you how to go out of this shell, this closed shell. So expressions are different. We are all becoming inside the same cage and having the same restrictions. So somehow we became some sort of universal citizen suffering from the same authorities or same restrictions. So before we were somehow different, but now we are united in having a huge problem or universal problem facing everyone in his own country. Actually, I want to give example because today's work we are going to discuss gives me that hint that The poet Mr. Das, actually talked about the prison. I thought it is essentially to find a key concept in reading poetry, a key that makes you able to filter words, phrases, themes, and thoughts. In his collection of verses, the key word was prison. In his short but evocative poem, Freedom, says, every time I get freedom, I discover myself in a prison smaller than the previous one. Actually, this is the life we face now in literature, because we are becoming somehow guests of this prison, this huge prison. We cannot move like we used to move before, and different prisons are all around us. As we read, we shall be involved in this world of prison, even outside reality. Your dream is a prison, as the poet himself phrases in another poem entitled Initiation. Prisons, in his poem, are not only cages with bars or jails with unlocked doors, they could be illusions as well. They could be thorns that prevent you enjoying watching roses. They could be waves or layers of an onion, and they are always something hidden behind. There is a concept that the poet's bird having his delusion, it is difficult to understand whether the bird has fallen in love with the cage or the cage is in love with the bird. The poet's bird refuses to leave the cage, and the cage refuses to leave the bird. And this reminds me with a poem I wrote some 20 years ago called The Prison. The dreaming prisoner asks his unjust guard, how could you know that you are not my prisoners? Aren't we separated by the same bars? So we are all prisoners, we are all guards. We are exchanging our rules between inside and outside. So we are keeping moving, we are keeping writing, but to be inside or a nation is different from being outside.
Thank you so much. And you've so beautifully highlighted a very important theme, that is of freedom, and also related it to the poets Subhrasankar's poems, and how how this pandemic has brought us a sort of universal experience, and how it kind of has leveled us in certain ways. And that is also something that we have learned, how life can be one of the greatest levelers. Well, let us see what Glenn has to tell us about his experience, about his views on literature.
Thank you. Good evening. It's good morning here. I like the idea of a global poetry resisting. I think that's very, very important. I'm actually coming to you from the same Michigan county that unfortunately you may have seen, where there's been another school shooting in the US. So I think as we write, we're trying to come to terms with greed and violence and fascism. And these are very, very scary times. I'm kind of interested in just how we do that. I bet there's no one in this panel that isn't in agreement that these are trends. So we're kind of pushing against things we dislike, but the brightness is still there. We've become more inclusive as poetry cultures as well, and there's all kind. Not all of the voices look like each other anymore. Which even if they sort of look like me in the past, I'm very thankful that that's no longer going to be the case. I see a couple trends in the last current trends that maybe were established in my lifetime in American poetry. I'm interested in the way that poets address the resistance through form rather than content. I think one way of doing this is to try to pull everything we know onto the stage, onto the page. This would be a very like New York School of Poetry kind of thought, a very John Ashbery way of going about things. And it occurs to me it's a very Walt Whitman way of going about things, to keep your eyes open and keep your poems open to shifts, to maybe even ephemera that doesn't seem, it's a very democratic notion, actually. And I can see Subhrasankar in his book being open to surprise, being open to new places to go. So I think that's still something that is a format we're deciding about. Quite the opposite. I think other poets that I come across are becoming very, very personal and very tight in their composition. So if we can contrast Walt Whitman with Emily Dickinson, I think that instinct to be private, to be small, to be meaningful, to be magical, to be elemental is still there as well. And I think that's a kind of resistance as well. A way of being worldly by being personal. I really think that the personal is the universal, and the universal is the personal to a large extent. I don't know how all of that works. I hope to live long enough to even get to start to figure this stuff out. But I don't know if anybody's lifetime is quite sufficient for that. I want to listen more and stop talking. So, but I really thank you for including me this evening. That's my input.
Thank you. And yes, poetry or any kind of literature definitely is always a site of resistance, a kind of, I think creativity ensures that we resist what should not be. And also we include, be more, as you said, be more inclusive in our taking up things that we consider to be more valuable to life. So let me now move to Pramila ji and see once again if she's able to unmute herself, ma'am, please. Yes. So.
Sorry for the trouble.
Not at all, not at all. These glitches we have to live with in webinars.
I am not computer savvy. I have had to take help of my granddaughter for this.
Sure.
Yes, now I start. I am Punjabi, and what I feel, literature is the mirror that reflects society, the geographical features, culture, civilization, past and present scenario in the region and country, and current issues form major part in literature. I am not talking of only poetry, but it is with the literature. The man has developed and advanced from stone age to present age of digital world that has made the access to every corner of the world easier and faster. Literature is the witness to those changes. Love, pangs of separation, spiritual pursuits, human emotions, love of nature, music, and fine art have invoked literature in every age. Besides the current incidents, occurrences touching the inner chord, also form major part in literature as we see the various movements, pangs of partition of India. In India, we have literature or huge literature on pangs of partition. Then Chinese aggression. During Chinese aggression, I am witness to that in 1962. Huge literature of patriotism was published in that age. The pitiable plight of women has generated unforgettable pieces of literature. Now, the farmers' agitation of 1 year, being Punjabi, I am more connected to this feature. The farmers in agitation of 1 year has given birth to several books on the issue from various angles. Literature has faced uncountable changes even since the existence. Passing through all the ages, it has flourished immensely. In this age of cybernetics, I am coming to present age. In this age of cybernetics, it has an art form. It is being redefined as per the needs of younger generation. Access to the moon and Mars and faster communication has made the man more ambitious, sharper, more active and faster. He wants to utilize the every moment and has no time to stand and stare. As we read in Robert Frost's poem, rapid changes have brought changes in education system also. Long narrative answers have been replaced by objective type answers. Letters to friends and relatives are a matter of yore. In present days, letter writing art is deteriorating. I feel the coming generations will be astonished if they come across the books like Letters from a Father to His Daughter. They will consider it very strange that a man can communicate at the touch of a finger in seconds. Mobile phones and computers have made them the man impatient, edgy, and hungry for knowledge. Cybernetics reading is displacing linear closed solitary reading. SMS has created new room for urban quotations and poems. Stories can now be presented in 140 characters or less. Long stories have replaced with mini short stories. Flash fiction and microfiction have sidelined long elaborate pattern of writing. The entire information is available at the click. Dictionaries like Oxford, once called the Bible of literature, are no longer sought after as every mobile phone has a dictionary. The six-word novel is a new field for writers to experiment. After she died, she came alive. It is a fiction by Rebecca James, and One Gun, Two Shots, Three Dead by Marcy are such examples of fiction. Of course, trends are fascinating and interesting, but it is considered degrading the classics and conventions of literature. Twittering, blogging, Facebook poetry, microblogging, six-word novels are new trends, but grammar spellings are missing. And with that, human emotions too. We are lacking human emotions in literature present in present scenario. Writing emotions and feelings in a diary secretly has been replaced by Facebook posts and picture albums. It doesn't mean that literature is not being produced. Man needs outlet to pent up feelings. Literature is the most important form to express. Therefore, more literature is being produced in this fast world, but that lacks the immortality of old classics. Now I come to the poetry. Poetry is the form of literature that is the spontaneous overflow of human feelings that can never be erased from literature. Themes may change with the change of society. The metaphors and similes may change from natural symbols to pragmatic symbols, yet the emotions and feelings are universal, throbbing in human beings. In contemporary poetry, complexity, abundance of output, revolt against tradition, love of nature, pity for the poor and his suffering, disillusionment, loss of faith in religion, the metaphysical note, the romantic strain, the influence of music and other five arts, and new techniques are main trends in modern poetry. The new poetry is romantic as well as realistic. The poet raises his voice against atrocities and human cry. Although we have digital age, yet we will remain human. We can use robbers but can't become robbers. As long as there are sentiments and feelings, literature will survive. Books will be written and published in digital form as well as in hard copies. After all, Google has to be updated with new creations to enlighten the world. This is my opinion about contemporary trends and themes in literature, and we'll discuss more with reference to Subhrasankar's anthology and Anachronous Shower. Thank you.
Thank you, Pramilaji. You've actually brought into the within the scope of discussion all the newly emerging trends, which is the theme of today's conversation as well. And yes, the sex word novels and the flash fictions, they are there. They are definitely, they do have a certain amount of readership, but I'm also hopeful that a novel will survive, because otherwise, why do we have such huge success even now for, say, the trilogy by Amitabh Ghosh, which is a well-researched one, the River trilogy, the Ibis trilogy, or maybe the award-winning novels that we are seeing and we are reading. And one thing that I feel as a translator, which comes to my mind, is that one of the emergent thing is translated literature, which is giving us a taste of literature worldwide and giving us an opportunity to read people from Iran, from Afghanistan, from all across the languages which we do not have. We, as in all of us, most of us are either one language, two language, at the max three. We do have Shyamul Bhattacharya here who knows a number of language, but then people like him are quite rare. But then I think translated literature too is a form of emergent literature. Thank you so much for this enlightening.
I know three languages and I write in three languages. And
yeah, that's like amazing. So that's what I'm saying. But then we do get to read
within
so
a year.
much.
Got second edition.
Right. Yes, I was reading your
Yes.
bio note where you did talk about Punjabi and Hindi, and then there's this English thing.
Yes.
Your mention of partition actually brings to my mind one poem which I'll just read from Subhrasankar. It's a very short poem which is a part of this anthology. The wicks and the condiments are burning themselves. The poem is titled The Altar. The wicks and the condiments are burning themselves to keep the flame alive. The god is in coma. The legendary lampstand is absorbed in contemplation, and the disciple has lost his prayer. As you mentioned partition, I was thinking of these lines, and probably that's what we people from Punjab and Bengal, we can probably never forget the trauma that one event had led to, and it has how generations have been affected. Let's now move to Professor Parthasarathi Das. Yes, let's now move to Professor Parthasarathi Gupta from Tripura University, and let's hear what he has to say regarding the emergent trends in literature. Parthada.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, first of all. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. And greetings to Mr. Ashraf Aboul-Yazid. Greetings to Mandana KM, Glenn Armstrong, Rashmika Mandwala, Shamul Babu, Shamul Bhattacharjee. We spoke once long back. Although we are not in touch, but I know him. And I'm reading his book right now, Bukhari. Also greetings to Ms. Pramila Arora and definitely Navonita. Greetings to you too, and Subhrasankar. Now, right at the outset, I would like to apologize in advance, for maybe being incorrigibly talkative, maybe argumentative. As you know, after all, Amartya Sen calls Indians argumentative, and I would like to add that we are talkative too, and in addition to that, I sincerely believe that I know too little, so I'm an empty vessel that way. Would make too many sounds. Anyway, so as I was wondering this evening, how to present a distilled summation of all that I wish to say within the span of around 5 minutes, it suddenly occurred to me that I present this apology in advance, whether I would be able to stick to that time limit. It also occurred to me that the Zeitgeist, the spirit of the times that we are all part of, I mean, which I have realized from even right now from what I have heard from all of you. The 3 A's, I've identified the 3 A's. In fact, not 3, but 4 A's. Anxiety, aggression, attunement, and atrophy. I think much of contemporary art and literature across the globe have been grappling with strategies to express and also represent panic, trauma, aggression, and also consequent atrophy at not finding an appropriate outlet or resolution. Recently, I was reading Giorgio Agamben's essay, Where Are We Now? And I quote in that essay, Where Are We Now? Very interesting lines. What does it mean to live in the emergency situation in which we have found ourselves? Now, this is an essay which was written in 2020 during the pandemic. What does it mean to live in the emergency situation in which we have found ourselves? It surely means staying at home, but also not succumbing to the panic that the authorities and the media are spreading every chance they get. And remembering that our neighbor is not just an annoiter and a possible agent of contagion, but first of all, our fellow to whom we owe our love and support. Now, panic, trauma, anxiety have begun to dictate our lives today, as we are acutely aware of. Some react with aggression, some react with atrophy, with a sense of paralytic acknowledgement that this is the end and no new beginning can be made. Now, as a teacher and a reader of literature, I've identified 2 short stories today for all of you, which may sum up our Zeitgeist or the spirit of our times. Both composed by 2 South Asians, one Bangladeshi from Bangladesh and another from South Korea. If you want me to sort of oversimplistically describe them, I would say one non-vegetarian and the other vegetarian. Now, the Bangladeshi author that I'm talking about is none other than, you may have heard of him, Mashiul Alam. He's a widely translated author, and the story that I would be referring to from a collection of short stories which was published in 2019, titled Mangsher Karbar, or the Meat Market. Mangsher Karbar, or the Meat Market. I hope I'm audible. Now, Mashiul Alam wrote his first novel. His first novel, in fact, was recently published in 2020. The story that I'm referring to is a short story, but his first novel was published in 2020. It was titled Tonusri Shonge Ditiyo Raat. Now, English translations of Mashiul Alam's short stories have been published, widely published, in fact, and he also recently won the Sylhet Mirror Award for Literature in 2019. Now, it's a very peculiar story which drew my attention. It's a story about a wife-fearing husband, Aminul Islam, who is out to please his wife, by purchasing 10 kilo khashi meat, or the meat of a castrated goat, having been forewarned by his wife not to be duped by the seller, who has this habit of mixing up khashir mangsho with sheep and she goat meat. So, if you read the story, you'll find that when the husband goes to the meat market to purchase meat, he is amidst very, very gory scenes of animal butchery, amidst very, very detached and impassive observers who wait like obedient servants to be served by the shopkeeper, who would first butcher the carcass, and then butcher the animal, and then skin the carcass, and then would be ready to sell the meat. And in the process, what happens is, Aminul Islam, our protagonist, is acutely aware of the fact that there's a meat scam going on in the city. And as his wife had already forewarned, it's a very, very common practice where pure khashi meat is not sold, and it is mixed with other kinds of meat. Now, Aminul protests at the site of this market, and he tries to expose the mafiosi involved in this butcher trade. Okay, and when he addresses the butcher Suleiman, who was about to sell off goat meat in the name of castrated goat meat, Suleiman is not ready to take nonsense. Suleiman simply tells him on his face, in a very, very authoritarian tone, in fact, very dictatorial tone, that either you have it, or you simply exit. Now, when Aminul gets into a sort of an altercation with him, suddenly a sort of a meaningless violence ensues, and Aminul is dragged by his throat, and within no time he finds his throat being slit and his body being butchered, as his spirit escapes his body, and the spirit of Aminul becomes the narrator, becomes the focalizer. And as his body is being butchered violently in broad daylight amidst the gaze of indifferent passers-by and spectators, nobody has anything to say, or nobody has anything to comment. So what we notice here is a kind of an atrophy. Okay, people have forgotten to react. People have forgotten to talk. People are rendered mute, speechless. Now, again, while I was reading this story, I again was drawn into another essay from the same collection of Giorgio Agamben. The essay is titled "What is Fear?" Very, very interesting. Very interesting essay on fear, trauma, etc. And Agamben explains in that essay, "What is Fear?" again published in 2020. He explains this peculiar nature of contemporary fear, that we are all going through right now, which perhaps engenders this atrophy. And Agamben says, in fact, he draws a lot of theoretical knowledge from none other than Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger's book Being and Time, where he says that fear in our times has become almost a mode of attunement. In other words, we have become accustomed. Fear has become a sort of an agency, through which we have allowed ourselves to adjust and get accustomed, to what is happening around us, to the source of our fear all around us. So when we perceive something threatening, sometimes we perceive the threat, and at the same time we imagine that we would be unaffected by that threat, and that threat perhaps would not reach us. We are at a safe distance from that threat. And Agamben gives a beautiful analysis of the various kinds of fears and threat perceptions that suddenly we are in the grip of. Now this is what I found very interesting, and I would like to read some extracts from Mashiul Alam's story, just a few extracts, if you give me time, where when the hero Aminul, when he's at that meat market, he observes the customers who are watching everything very, very impassively while the butchering goes on. And when he argues with the seller, the seller simply tells him, "Don't shout, just be quiet and go home. You have no other job here. Just be quiet and go home." And when he is not quiet, it is at that time that in broad daylight, Suleiman simply drags him by the collar of Aminul. And Aminul realizes that Suleiman's hands possessed demonic strength. I quote, "He pushed my chin upward so hard that my neck bones cracked loudly. Goggle-eyed, I saw Suleiman's bloodshot eyes turn into fireballs. He bit down his lower lip, bent his arm with the long shiny knife, and within minutes, I felt that my spirit was released completely from my body. Utterly unburdened as if floating in air, I watched as gangly Suleiman hunched over Aminul Islam, which had been my name in your world, the shiny, sharp blade sliding deeper as it moved forward and almost disappearing in the meat, fat, bones, and cartilage of the neck as it slid back." The story doesn't stop here. What happens is, the meat scam which Aminul tries to expose, that is hushed up once again. And, he is butchered in broad daylight. Not only that, again, a very, very Senecan kind of a violence we find in the story when the butcher literally, skins him, prepares the meat, mixes up the meat with the goat meat, etc., when he's about to sell the meat to the customers. And the meat is ready for sale. Now, when he doesn't return home, when his wife realizes that her husband is not returning home, she is also totally unaffected. His wife, Rubina Sultana, she simply tells his brother, who at that time was sleeping at home, it was not late in the morning. She calls her brother saying that, "Well, your brother-in-law is not home yet. I don't know why is he taking so much of time to get the meat. You go and get the meat, because I cannot trust him. He perhaps has got into a sort of an adda with his friends and would not come home." So she's totally unaffected when he doesn't come home, when the husband doesn't come home. And the brother, Aminul's brother-in-law, goes to the market and gets 10 kilos of khashi meat. And you know what meat he brings home. Now, that's a very Senecan twist that the story takes, and where both brother and sister sit down to lunch together, and the meat that they're eating, while the spirit of Aminul cries out, from behind the veils, Please, Rubina, don't eat it. That is how the story ends there. Extremely violent story. Now, the next story that I would refer to here is, again, very briefly, it's a story by, again, a South Korean author. I'm sure you heard about him, Han Kang. I'm sure you heard of Han Kang and the first novel that he wrote in 2007, published in 2007, The Vegetarian. Okay. And but I would not refer to Vegetarian today. I would refer to another short story, The Fruit of My Woman. This is the first story which Han Kang wrote, which was a prelude to his latest novel. His later novel, The Vegetarian. The Fruit of My Woman. It's a story about a childless couple, and the husband realizes that his wife was gradually becoming atrophied. She was becoming inactive, passive, and she was withering away. Initially, she began to sort of display signs of anxiety. Then he found scars on her body, on literally every part of her body. And then finally, what he discovered to his horror, when he was out of home for around 2-3 months for office work, when he comes home, he finds this is almost a sort of a Kafka. It takes a Kafkaesque turn when the wife simply morphs into a plant as she withers, away. Much to the horror of her husband. As the husband leaves her all alone at home and he goes away for some office work in some foreign country. When he returns home, in the balcony he discovers that his wife was almost lying on the railings, and she had turned entirely green, and she was morphing into a sort of a plant. So she began to start living a vegetative existence, and the husband begins to water her daily, and gradually she is revived back into life, but she does not remain human anymore. She becomes a plant. And finally, she also begins to bear fruit. And the title of the story is The Fruit of My Woman. Okay? And she morphs into a very beautiful fruit-bearing plant. It's a very interesting story where, the fecundity of the woman, somehow her ability to produce an abundant quantity of fruit is contrasted with the early part of the story when she's a childless wife. So these are two very interesting stories of the 3 A's that I pointed out to you: anxiety, aggression, attunement, and atrophy. And I think these are some of the major themes, in fact emergent themes, which I as a reader, I as a teacher am having to grapple with at this present moment, when we are all steeped in a sort of a crisis of sorts, where at every moment of our life, every second of our life, we are all anxiety ridden. Thank you.
Thank you, Bartada. And you've actually, the second story that you spoke about of the woman plant morphing into a plant also brings to my mind the contemporary critical trend that is going on in that is emerging as one of the very important aspect of literature, where we look at humans not from the Anthropocene perspective, but as a part of nature, not the eco-apartheid as Vandana Shiva talks about, but as a part of the nature as a whole, as an organic part. And thank you for highlighting also fear, of course, is definitely a very important part of literature in all ages, because I suppose we cannot do away with fear, whatever the whatever our situation be, this fear in some form or the other, and always remains the horror, the fear. It's like, thank you for highlighting these two stories and talking about the emergent trends. And now I move to Mandana. And may I request Mandana to unmute herself and switch on the video and talk and let us know what you think about the emergent trend in literature is. Thanks, Mandana.
Hello, everyone. Very good evening to you all. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Am I audible? Very nice. Hope you are fine during this pandemic situation. It's nice to see you all via this platform. Actually, as the previous speakers mentioned, today I just want to have a different approach toward the literary studies and literary genre. Previously, we used to read and enjoy poem and story novel for their own sake, actually. But nowadays, for us as linguists and translators, literature or literary genre is not merely a text. While translating a literary genre, we deal with the deep structure, surface structure, cultural elements, social classes, accent, dialects, and also whether we are just going to decide that whether we are going to just be a text bound or we are going to be rhyme bound ones. Or at the other hand is that another issue is that whether we are going to use creativity in our translations for the literary genres or not, or merely or simply we are going to convey the message without any creation. On the other hand, so we should use these elements and we should think and consider about these elements while we are just conducting our translations. Another point is the corpus linguistics. I don't know whether you are aware or not. Corpus linguistics is the new approach toward the literary genre. Through this corpus linguistics, we are just using different methods, and corpus linguistics actually paved our way toward the literary genre and literary studies as well. In this method that we are just calling it corpus linguistics, we are just going to indicate the marked patterns of the language, actually, you know, we are usually using the unmarked patterns, but when you are just using you are just producing a creative work, so you are using marked patterns. So in this approach, we are just seeking and we are just looking forward the marked patterns as well. Even linguistics are just eager to analyze to see that how particular word or phrase has been just used in a, for instance, literary genre. Therefore, we can just have two approaches regarding the corpus linguistics. We have CDA and CBA. That the one is just corpus-driven approach, and the other one is corpus-based approach. In the corpus-driven approach, we are just merely work the corpus, and we are just analyzing the entire corpus to see that, for instance, how the structures have been used inside that, without any assumption and without any hypothesis. But regarding the corpus-based studies, we have some hypotheses in our minds, so we are just digging inside or we can say text mining inside the text in order to find that whether that text is just in line with our hypothesis or not. Therefore, when we are just doing the CBA analysis or corpus-based analysis, we are just analyzing the content and semantic networks of the inside the text. And at the second step, we are just using and we are just analyzing the grammatical approaches, including the grammatical forms, including the syntax, morphology, which are available inside the poetry. At the third stage, we just look forward to find the rhymes and rhythms that are available inside the poem. That in the work of the Subhrasankar does, that it was a wonderful work. I didn't find the rhymes since it's a new, we call it as a modern poem. That, as you know, modern poetry has been just issued by the poems Ansari, has been issued and has been just produced by the poets within the 20th and 21st centuries. That is why maybe some poems that are available during these centuries, they lack the rhyme as well. Thank you very much. So through this, within a nutshell, I can say that linguistic and translation approaches can open new actually horizons toward the literary genre. Even they can just teach us the techniques that we can use in order to just make much more creativity in our literary genre furthermore. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mandana. And yes, corpus linguistics is definitely one of the upcoming fields where, and as you rightly said, that with translation and linguistics together, we're definitely looking forward to a future of new forms of literature, and definitely technology has added to it, which also brings to my mind the e-literatures, that is the technology aided literature that has been so popular. It's been quite popular in the West, not so much in India, but even in India now it is gradually catching up. The trend is gradually catching up. But yes, as we advance with technology, and literature also remains a part, it is definitely we are looking at a time, we cannot rule out the bringing these two together, the technology and the literary aspect of it. Thank you so much. We now move to Rashmika from Sri Lanka. Rashmika, let's hear what you have to say, and yeah, over to you.
Good evening to all of you. So first of all, I would like to congratulate my dear writer Subhrasankar Das for his new book. So I was listening to these speeches, and I have one feeling that actually that recently that I was taking my time to read this Subhrasankar's book, and I see there are some emergent themes with relating to COVID pandemic, and with the discussion that you brings up with that human-centric thinking, or that humans are like isolating from the nature, that we are thinking that we are not the part of the nature sometimes. So as we progress that this pandemic almost 2 years, we are now in a situation that we should look back what has gone through. At least it is always important to understand what comes next and be prepared for it, as I see it. In fact, the literature can be used as a method to review the past and foretell the future. For me, in this way, sometimes writers can be seers. So I would like to introduce one or two literary works in Sri Lankan literature arena. Before that, I would like to see that like this. In all those years, we have a lot of conflicts in this world. We have conflicts between religions, between nations, between castes, between class, between race, ethnicities, many more. But if this question raised, what we can see if we look at another human, most oftenly we could see his color, black or white, or religion, whatever the class is in, whatever the race. But actually, the problem is, can we see the human itself? Can we see the human same as us, right? So, I have one of these novel published in Sinhala. Its name is titled as Kotathuappu. We can say in English that shortened gun. So that writer is Priyantha Liyanage. He is provoking this topic. Why we why we actually why we can't replace hate with love. The world, I think, just now we need the love. Most of the time we need the love, so not the hate. So the problem is, even though we are in a pandemic situation, we see what happens in the world. We are fighting. The people, even the nations are fighting. There's a conflict between Israel and Palestine all the times. But we see the world is fading. The world is like fading before our eyes. But as a writer or the person in the literature, I would like to build up this world in a different way. So the contemporary literature, the themes in the contemporary literature should be addressed on this matter. And I can see there are a lot of new books coming up. There's another one, this one recently shortlisted to Booker Prize, the one of the Sri Lankan, Anupragasa. The book is a passage note. Let me to read first sentence in his book. He writes, "The present, we assume, is eternally before us, one of the few things in life from which we cannot be parted." And the story goes on, "It overwhelms us in the painful first moment of entry into the world, when it is still too new to be managed or negotiated, remains by our side during childhood and adolescence, in those years before we wait of memory and expectation. And so it is sad and a little unsettling to see that we become, as we grow older, much less capable of touching, raising, or even glimpsing it." That story goes on, but he argues that what happens in the Sri Lanka, that we had the 30 years war between two ethnicities. So he's from one ethnicity. He was the character in the novel is from the Colombo. He's from the character from urban area. But when the last phase of the civil war, he sees that his people is suffering, but he didn't do anything about it. Later, he get that guilty comes with his inner struggle. So he discusses in this book how we see the present is eternally before us. We are thinking the present is eternally before us, right? So but it is not. That's the argument he is having in this book. So I see it is one of another emergent themes, that the novel is a very philosophical one. He describing the philosophical thing inside the human, right? So I'm moving on to the next one. One of the another Sinhala novel. Say this is. We can say this as Merit of Love, because I was thinking that we should need love more to this world. So that story goes as one person devotes his life to create a better world. So in the end, what will happen to him in this society or in this so-called system? So it's arguably discussed. It is very hard to do right thing in this world, but at least we should try. So it is not easy as always you do the right thing, but it is very hard to do the right thing, but at least we should do the right thing. So that novel comes as like this. So I would like to go one of the poem that from the Subhrasankar's book is titled as Religion. Let me to recite it for you. The name of my dog is Religion. When I feed him with the mixture of love and pedigree, he devours it as if he is consuming ambrosia. Wow! When I turn him over, he becomes gold and shoots his golden sperm towards the horizon like a virile maniac. Number two, look, the mosque and the temple covering the sky like boobs. Your dear crow has launched there with my favorite soap. So when I was reading this poem, that I was thinking that how beautiful this Subhrasankar is thinking that the name of my dog is religion. So some this is different thinking as I see it. That when I feed him with the mixture of love and pedigree, I think this is the thinking we need to this world. The religion or whatever the nation, whatever the caste we have to be united. Otherwise, we all will be doomed very near future. So I think these are the contemporary themes in our in the Sri Lankan literature, and also I would love to see that he mentioned the Hancock's novel, The Vegetarian. That was exceptionally wonderful one. If you haven't read it, I am suggesting to read that. Hancock is actually a very thought-provoking writer. She always gives us to think twice before you interpret it. So that's wonderful writer she is. I am concluding my few words here. So again, congratulating Subhrasankar. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Rashmika, and you have taken us on a tour of Sri Lankan literature, and it's been our privilege to hear about the works that you speak. But and also thanks for reading from Subhrasankar's anthology, which we are launching today. But since we are running out of time, I'll quickly move to Shyamul Bhattacharya, and I'll ask him to talk about his experience of contemporary emerging trends in contemporary literature. Shyamul.
Thank you, Navnita. Am I audible? Navnita? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I must thank Insha Publication New Delhi for arranging such a beautiful evening, and my co-panelist Ashraf, Aboul-Yazid, Glenn Armstrong, Mandana, Rashmika Mandala, Parthasarathi Gupta, Pramila Gupta, and Subhrasankar and Navnita. All of you presented us an excellent evening. Actually, as Navnita is knowing, we are also experiencing an Anachronous shower outside at Kolkata today, and it is raining. So I must start with two lines by Subhrasankar. The poetry is rain. We hardly notice the sights and sounds of reversed rain. What a poetry, small one. Actually, the emergent themes in contemporary literature, the melting of glaciers, and the terrorism. After this, this Afghanistan has come up in different way. So I'll talk about the first one.
People in mountain regions are increasingly exposed to hazards and changes in water availability. Glaciers, snow, ice, and permafrost are declining and will continue to do so. This is projected to increase hazards for people through landslides avalanches, rock falls, and floods. As mountain glaciers retreat, they are also altering water availability downstream, with implications for agriculture, hydropower, industrial, and domestic use. Rapid sea level rise and accelerated melting of polar and non-polar glaciers due to global warming will increasingly disrupt lives of more than 1.4 billion people living in mountainous and coastal areas unless urgent steps are taken to control greenhouse gas emissions. Along with the ocean, the cryosphere, the frozen parts of the planet, plays a critical role for life on Earth. As many as 670 million people in high mountain regions and 680 million people in low-lying coastal zones depend directly on these systems. 4 million people live permanently in the Arctic, and small island nations are home to 65 million people. Global warming has already reached 1 degree Celsius above the pre-industrial level due to greenhouse gas emissions, mainly carbon dioxide. According to the special report on ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate, there is overwhelming evidence that this is resulting in profound consequences for ecosystems and people.
Let's quickly have here some poems from. We already have some speakers who have already recited some poems, but let's hear others read from the poets' collection. And can I ask Glenn to read a few lines from the collection if he has it with him right now? One poem, maybe.
Thank you. I got just a couple really good lines from a very favorite poem called Democracy. So I write in the poem Democracy, the poet pokes at those who would undermine the poem's titular societal aspiration. And then the poem, to quote the poem, the hero has surrendered to the makeup man, the brand of cigar, the color of tea, and the costumes. And I write that Das knows that our emperors have no clothes, that the frightening rulers of our emerald cities are merely the mechanizations of dreary men behind curtains. His distrust of power is in line with some of our most revered counterculture voices from the 1960s. And that particular poem makes me think of Bly and Brodigan and Allen Ginsberg. Hopefully that's enough to celebrate that particular really well done poem.
Thank you. So, all right. I had actually not introduced formally the poet Subhrasankar, and because that was something that I wanted to leave before the poetry reading session starts, but since there was some technical glitch in between, and I just quickly asked Glenn to read. I'll now, before moving any further, I'll give a brief introduction to the poet of the evening, for whose book launch we have gathered today. So he was born on 1st May and he hails from Tripura, India. He's one of the most vibrant figures of contemporary Indian literature. Is a bilingual poet, a postgraduate teacher, and by profession, and a translator of repute. His poems, he's the author of Tontucate, Bowl Molecules, Sphotic Chapa Phosphorus, and an Anachronous Shower. He's translated some of the significant literary pieces of Shamol Bhattacharya, Larissa Shmailov, Mario Santagostin, Linda Pastan, Trishna Boshak, Padmasree Majumdar, and others. And some of his poems have been translated into Russian by Russia by a Russian poetess, Anna Halberstadt. He has been hosting the international webinar on war and soldierhood and the official curator of Poesia 2021, organized by the Institute of Linguistics of Russian Academy of Sciences, Ministry of Higher Education, Russian Federation. He's been the delegate of Immune, recognized by UNESCO, UNDP, and Australian Embassy. He also edits, as I had already mentioned in my introductory piece, that he also edits Shadowcraft and Water. He is also the recipient of Binoy Padak from Kolkata, Banani Sahitya Samman again from Kolkata, Certificate of Appreciation and Publication from Red Penguin, New York, America, and India Prime Authors Award from Punjab. So he's currently working on a number of projects for the upliftment of Northeast literature and for the sake of peace and creativity. So we know how creative and how dynamic he is, and how relentlessly he had been working for literature, and hope he keeps on his pursuit. So now I'll go to our next speaker, Professor Parthasarathi Gupta, and ask him to read from Subhrasankar's anthology or to say a few words about it.
Thank you, Navanita. First of all, I also have an introduction. I also have a few words to introduce Subhrasankar. Incidentally, Subhrasankar also happens to be my student. I taught him at the master's level at the university at the Department of English. So I am Subhrasankar's teacher. So, it's a matter of great pleasure that, I'm here to grace this occasion. I mean, to be part of this occasion. I wouldn't say to grace this occasion, to be part of this ceremony. I have he has been writing since he was a student, and the way he has flowered, he has nurtured his skills is something which compels my wonder. I mean, he's really done a great job. He's worked very hard, and also he has allowed his creative spirit to be properly honed by the right kind of skill that is required for him to shape up his his ideas and thoughts. So full marks to him as a teacher. Anyway, and now when I was going through his poems, I identified a sort of a motif, which a leitmotif rather, which somehow binds the entire collection together. Not all poems, rather, but it is a sort of a recurrent theme, which is home, which in fact is domesticity, attachment to one's own private space. Today, in this very very sort of strange world that we are living in. Every individual, we somehow, at some point of time, we are all worried about whether we would have to leave our home at some point of time or not, for the sake of career, for the sake of profession, and obviously for so many other reasons. Shamal Babu mentioned the Afghanistan context a while ago, and we've seen how people are literally fleeing from their own homes. So when one is struck by a compulsion to leave one's home, how it affects one's psyche that way. So I would like to read out from a very sweet poem which is titled "Home" from this collection. It goes like this. Every home has a fragrance. To forget this presumption, I spray perfume around the room, close my eyes for a blue, profound sleep, inhaling the aroma of incense stick, plunging into the coil of smoke I try to find. Which puff of breath had made you fly? The blade nearing black vein is ready to dive into the pink water. Sleek and silent cell phone is vibrating continuously. Only he knew you had never been addicted to the aroma of damp wood around the home. Another, poem from, on the same theme almost. It's titled Neighbor. It goes like this. Where should I go? My home is suffering from schizophrenia. She thinks I am a neighbor. She rolls up the staircase and keeps her eyes and mouth shut. Just the next poem, very short poem once again, The Holes of Ventilator. Just close the doors and windows. No home has his own light, but darkness, like moon or love. He is a beggar by birth and proud of his stolen light. It's my habit to roam around the room blindly, and if I come across something new, I try to open a leaf of the window and see how much light is getting in and going out, how much light is getting black, being stuck in the holes of ventilator. That's all. Well, these are the poems that immediately struck me, and I thought of, summing them up in my own words. So once again, I congratulate Subhrasankar for coming up with this collection.
Thank you. And it must be a proud occasion to talk about your students' work, and I can understand how you must be feeling at the moment. And congratulations to you too for being his teacher and shaping up the way he has shaped himself up. So now,
but I have no role here. I have no role here. He is a creative person. I'm not a poet. He is one.
Right, of course, all credits to him, but then the teacher also needs to be acknowledged. And now, may I ask Promilaji to talk about or read as you wish from Subhrasankar's, about Subhrasankar's anthology.
Thanks, Numadita. Subhrasankar was introduced to me by Shyamalda. He translated Bukhari, and I was to write about Shyamalda, and I edited it. Subhrasankar is no doubt a renowned bilingual poet, writer, versatile singer. I have heard his singing skill also. And he publishes e-magazines, as you have said, Shadowcraft and Water. And what I have found, he is a devoted teacher and moreover, a great human being. After reading his work, I have found him a writer with a difference, representing new generation of writers. He is subtle, spontaneous, satirical in his writing with freshness of symbols and brevity. I heartily welcome his new anthology named An Anachronous Shower. It is just a shower of thoughts. As the name suggests, this book is not conventional in its style, and the poet brings shower chronologically misplaced. Being young, once he commented about Nobel laureate Tagore. I was working on him, and he could that younger generation is not an ardent reader of Tagore as the older people are. But after reading his anthology, I have found the presence of Tagore's thoughtfulness in some of his poems with different fervor and flavor when he writes, trying to erase you. These words caught my eye at first instance. Trying to erase you, I go on rubbing the eraser on me. It indicates complete mergence of I and you as reflected in Tagore's poetry. He feels that we couldn't fulfill the dream of freedom as mentioned in his poem, Where the Mind is Not Without Fear, and invites rebels to rise at such place. I just translated Words in Solitude of Dr. Harminder Singh Bedi from Hindi to English. His first poem was She No Longer Breaks the Stones. It was reverse of Nirala's work वह तोड़ती पत्थर इलाहाबाद के पथ पर मैंने देखा वह तोड़ती पत्थर she breaks the stone. It was the verse of that poem, and I found Where the Mind is with Fear, reverse to Tagore's poem Where the Mind is Without Fear. Where the mind is with fear and the head is missing, where people have learned from grass the spells to be a Lilliput and art of living under the feet of a monster is the best place the rebels to rise. He wants a revolution at such place. Subhrasankar Das writes poem in blood. That's why these touch the hearts of readers. He writes, instead of blood, you have poured ink in my vein. So I cut my skin with knife and write poems. This anthology is not a bunch of flowers as poetry is considered. It raises voice against diplomacy, hypocrisy. It sways human emotions. It invites to break with conventional and orthodox thoughtfulness. Just see his line on the saint. He is vegetarian. Spoon feeds himself the heart's grass cake. Chants her name 108 times. Here's the half of his once. He is outrightly blunt in writing against hypocrite leadership. I don't like parties and politics. Once I went to a party and espied how the leaders were dipping their fingers in the glass of wine to keep their hairs in shape. And these lines were mentioned about how he ridicules democracy, the democratic leaders. I think the hero has surrendered to the makeup man, the brand of cigar, the color of tea, and the costume. Everything has to be altered and redefined. The country is free and stages are prepared for celebration, but the halls are devoid of audience. The Dolby Digital has been clapping all alone. It happens when the congregations and meetings are held. The poet is not only sarcastic in his approach, he is humanitarian in his compositions too. In his poem Zero, he subtly reflects that it is human nature that we realize the value of a person when he is not with us and we become zero. The poem Purity somehow seemed very close to my heart as I wrote similar thoughtfulness in Hindi. If the water is surprisingly quiet and transparent, The bucket appears empty, even it is full. A little touch may create turmoil as the vessel has no space to hold the excitement of water. Beautiful poem he has written. Contemporary metaphors, similes, and images charm the reader when he visualizes. These things attracted my attention. You open the door of my heart as if you are entering a restaurant and bite my veins and arteries as if they are noodles. How he compared arteries and veins with noodles. It's wonderful composition. His poem Sari is another example of such piece of poetry. There is no scent of relationship in the sari of grandma, only the handicraft of homemade and the whiff of surf excel. Then he attacks the growing nudity in advertisement. These days, in two-liner poem that shakes, I stepped off up to my skeleton. No one offered me a flake of shame to treasure. This an anachronous shower is really a shower of multiple dimensions and valuable gift to literature. I was really moved to read the poem Ode to a Mother that raises questions before the widowed mothers who sacrifice all the charms of life. In India, it happens so. This poem is the most emotional poem in the collection of as Subhrasankar Das felt it from the core of his heart to see the plight of his mother. I would like to read the whole poem for the audience and for Subra especially before winding myself up. It is I really cried to read this poem. It made me cry. That's why I am reading this. Dear Mom, won't you use vermilion on your forehead anymore? The stamp of my father's belated, that made you proud and elated. For what? I don't know. Have we become poor and helpless only because father is a star and I am worthless, half educated, and unemployed? How long will you use the same sari? Never have you thought of saying, today I am not in the mood of cooking? Don't you feel tired? Don't you have a birthday or a hobby or a friend? Don't you live? Don't you die? Why are you so sacred, Mom? Why are you so sacred, Mom? Don't you have a sin to hide? Are you living to die? Or are you dying to live? Do you live on? Did you kill a daughter, a lover, a woman? Do you live on a lie? Did you cut the wings of a butterfly after you became a mother? Do you look at your when you see yourself, or you see through mirror the will and go beyond? That is how you know everything. Do you smile when you smile? Very beautiful question he asked. Do you smile when you smile? Do you cry when you cry? Do you live? Do you die, Mom? What is the price for such pathetic divinity? What is the price for such pathetic divinity? It's beautiful ode to mother, and these questions he asked from his mother still prevail in our society, and these have to be answered yet. We have to find answers to that. With these words, I congratulate my dear Subhrasankar Das for this beautiful anthology and wish him all the best. I bless him and pray to God to bless him with more and more power of pen This is my for him. I love him. I bless him. Thank you.
Thank you for that extremely heartwarming reading from the anthology. And it's true how he portrays the condition of mother, and through the figure of mother, every woman. Thank you for reading that. And since we are actually running out of time, I'll just quickly move to Mandana, who's been waiting for a long time, to ask her to share her views or read a poem from Subhrasankar's anthology of poetry.
Well, based on the text mining which I had over the Anachronous Shower of Subhrasankar Das, I realized that poet has used noun 28%, verb 21% in order to create his poetry style. The nouns ventilator, virus, and collocations such as we cannot breathe, mortal disease available in his collection were used to indicate COVID-19 implicitly. The highest frequent nouns in his collection were time, love, and birth, and based on the name of this collection, it can be said that these three elements can just travel beyond the time and are anachronous they themselves. The collocations such as polio-free India and family of the desert, as well as the nouns such as sari, elephant, fish, Kohinoor, they somehow are culture-loaded terms which indirectly used to convey the meaning regarding the background knowledge of the poet and his homeland. In the case of the using pronouns, actually only 9%, and regarding the poet's point of view, we can say that first, second, and third person point of views were used in his poetry. Regarding the numbers, he has mentioned the word 100 as a complete and full mark in his poem Zero, and as he has mentioned, you got 100 out of 100 there, Subhrasankar does, and heartiest congratulations to you.
Thank you, Mandana. And no event, no book launch can be complete without without some words from the poet himself. And we have not yet met the poet of this evening, Subhrasankar, for quite some time. We have not heard him this evening yet. So may I now request him to talk about his book, his journey as a poet, and to end this program for the evening. Thank you so much.
First of all, I would like to thank the publisher for sponsoring an Anachronous Shower, even in the days of COVID-19. Secondly, I extend my thanks and gratitude to all of you joining from different corners of the globe. Without your presence, the program would not have been virtually true. We have been suffering from a dry and elongated winter season. We have become snakes without poison, but we like to bite. We like to bite ourselves. We are damnedly in need of a shower to regain our human consciousness. Does a poet really know how his or her personal observations, socio-political circumstances, and sarcasms of life shape his poetry? Does he decide that he will write on a specific theme or subject matter? I'm not sure. I wrote an Anachronous Shower to bathe the readers with the juice of their own Pandora's box. I wrote so that people may understand, misunderstand, or don't understand what I tried to trigger in them. We are allowed to move our tongue, but we are not allowed to speak. We are happily jumping into the crevices created by technology and materialism, which have taken us away from the nature. We are inspiring our children to go higher, higher, and higher. But there is no oxygen. An anachronous shower is the child of insomnia caused by all these mentioned above and beyond. Thank you.